Good morning. Got another coffee talk for you guys. Had a nice rain shower last night. The weatherman was not suspecting it again. It could be raining out, and on the weather app it's like sunshine. So we are so grateful. We got about a half an inch. The AC did go out in our house last night though. So pro tip: we have a window AC unit we keep in the back in a closet. It was like 2 in the morning, pulled that baby out, stuck it in our bedroom window, plugged it in, and then we were back to bed. So that worked out pretty good. But it was 82 when we woke up and went to fix it. So it got pretty warm last night. Okay, let's talk about Colt starting discussion. So I had a couple posts on Facebook the last 2 days talking about Colt starting, kind of stirring up some stuff, muddying the water a little bit. And I want to talk about why I'm doing that right now. The biggest reason, I'm just going to give it to you right now. I get so many horror stories of people that took their horse to a Colt starter. They were taken advantage of. The horse was worse. Like, first thing I want to say, I feel like I don't know if anyone will agree with this, but I feel like a fairly humble Colt starter in the way that I know I can't train them all. There's some I can't get through to, especially when the person tells me their goals and how safe it has to be. And my granddaughter's got to ride in a parade in 45 days, and right now you can't touch it. And I'm pretty realistic with what I can accomplish after a few days with that horse. So if my friend Mark Lyon brought me one and said, hey, I'm going out of town for 2 weeks, can you put some rides on it? That's different. I'm sure I can. If it's someone else needing it super safe and they've only got 30 days worth of money, I don't want to, other guys will take their money for 90 days and the horse still won't be safe because they knew. Maybe they didn't know, but I'll know pretty early it's not going to work. Just based on my experience, the horses I've seen, the ones I've trained, and being realistic with my abilities. One thing I don't know if people realize is all Colt starters have different abilities. And at the same time, there's a guy down the road that's a reining trainer or a cow horse trainer, and Colt starting is not his specialty, I would say beware. Now, he may have started in Colt starting, and he may be okay, but it'd be the same thing sending me a horse you want a cow horse on next year. If it's not my specialty, beware. There's a good chance you're not going to be thrilled at the end of that deal. So I think finding good Colt starters is important. One of the things I brought up in my post is about first rides. Because most people that bring me a horse, their main concern is me getting on it several times. That's their main concern, because they're like, look, I can get the feet better, and I can get the fly spray good, and I can spray them off, and most of that stuff's going to get good while they're here. But if all I did was get them good to fly spray, get them good to trim, get them good to spray off, saddle them several times, and hey, they stand in the middle of the round pen, ground tied, and you can saddle them. And a person comes out a month later, they're like, well, how do they ride? And you're like, oh, they're not ready. No, they're not ready for a ride. See how that head comes up when I send them, and you see that nervousness, and you see and it's like, okay. And I like what that person's a little unhappy normally, because their main thing, they sent the horse to the Colt starter to get rode most of the time. Now, we do yearlings and weanlings too for halter breaking. Obviously, they don't send them here to get rode. They don't send them here to get saddled. So it's a different expectation. But most horses that are over 2, they want them rode. And that is what I think is one of the main jobs of a Colt starter. But in the last couple decades, people have changed it. Colt starters have changed it. And clinician people have kind of convinced other people, like, hey, we need all these other things good. Hey, we need to put relaxation first. And I don't put relaxation first. Although it's one of my top priorities, it doesn't happen first. I need that horse to do what I ask first. And so the reason I bring up the colt starting is I'm not trying to tell anybody they need to get on in 3 days. They need to get on in 10 days. They need to get on in a month. If you have different goals, you just need to find a colt starter that aligns with you, because there's people I wouldn't call colt starters. I think what they do is therapy, meaning like they're working way more on the mind than the physical actions of the horse. I care more about the horse physically doing what I ask. Then I get to the mind through repetition of that action. They get confident and relaxed. So the confidence comes from doing more of it. And on the therapy side, it's like every time the horse gets nervous, they back off, or they do less. They don't push that. They don't go outside that comfort zone of the horse. And so I don't call that a colt starter. Now those people sometimes call themselves colt starters, and if that's what you want, and you don't mind sending your horse out for a year or two or whatever it takes, these people are starting 3 to 6 a year, and I'm starting 3 to 6 a month sometimes, sometimes sometimes up to 6 or 8, and sometimes just 1 or 2, and the rest are from last month. So you figure I'm starting 50 to 80 first rides I'm doing a year, and I have a few others trickle in. They'll come for a week or a day, and I'll do a first ride. So I might come close to 100 first rides a year or something like that. Like that's no crazy number, but some people are doing 4 or 5 a year, and some of them even bring theirs to me to get on the first time, because even though they do that slow way, they still understand you don't know what's going to happen the first time the horse sees you up there. So as a client, you need to do your homework and figure out who aligns with you and your goals. If riding is your top priority, make sure you find a guy or girl that gets on and is, and keeps you in the loop. And the cool thing is, like, most people know their horse. They're pretty aware if it's going to be tough. They're pretty aware if it's fairly easy. They've been handling that thing since it's a weanling, and honestly, like, they could get on it. But they've got 2 kids, and they're like, look, I'm just not going to do the first ride out of principle of who knows. And they don't want to risk it and get hurt. So, it's hard. I feel bad when someone takes that horse to a person that puts 60 days on it and never gets on it. And then, what's funny anymore is people will not out the bad trainers. Here's a good story. When I first moved here, someone brought me a horse. It had been a colt starter for 7 months. And before it went, this woman and her son put a few rides on the colt. They got on it, rode it around. Sent it to a colt starter for 7 months. She's messaging, how's he doing? Oh, he's good, he's good. She'd go by. The guy'd be like, oh man, I'm in town, I just left. Oh man, I'm over here. And then the day she goes to pick it up, they're walking to the pen. Guy looks at her and says, I'm going to be honest, I've never been on your horse. 7 months. There's a bunch that are like that with 2 and 3 and 4 months. That keeps happening. But that person's a good friend of mine. They've never told me that guy's name. I couldn't tell you who did that to her. There's other horror stories I hear about horses getting way worse, and you say, well, what's the trainer's name? And no, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. And it's just because they don't want to get in the middle of a drama thing. Like, they're like, look, I lost 2,500, I lost 3,000. It's in the past, I'll never use them again. And that's their deal. But the reason I bring up this subject is we need to start thinking. We need to start saying, what's my time limit? Like, if they haven't got on them in 30 days, and don't tell your trainer. Don't drop your horse off and say, hey, my time limit's 30 days, you ain't got on, I'm picking them up. Don't tell them. Just know in your head, 30 days, this is what I want to see. And then at 30 days, go back and see, okay, they're not on, but they're almost on. I'm going to give them 1 more week. Or, okay, they're on and they got 3 rides. Or, okay, this horse is way worse than it should be. I'm going to pull them. I'm going to go somewhere else. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our program. And I'm not trying to sell you on it, because I don't necessarily need the clients right now. Like, we're full up. We keep a wait list. But I just want you to know what ours is. So I'm not trying to sell you. I'm just trying to tell you this is what we do. There's a lot of guys now or girls that are a 90-day minimum. Someone's bringing me a horse next month, and they came to look at our place the other day, and they said, I'm coming to you because the other guy I liked on Facebook, when I talked to him, he was a 90-day minimum, $1,500 a month, and it was all paid up front. You had to drop your horse off and $4,500 cash, and he would train your horse. And it's like, that's a lot. Like, that's hard to do for most people. Even if you have the money, it's still hard to do. Because a lot can happen in 90 days. Your horse could die at day 45, and you say, hey man, I need half my money back. And he's like, oh man, I spent it. I'm sorry, I'll work on it. And 6 months later, he still hasn't paid you. So that's tough. So what we are, I tell everyone, I'm a 1 day minimum. If you're not going to bring them for a day, don't even come out. And the biggest reason I got to this level where I don't have a minimum is because I tried the minimum thing, and what I was trying to fix didn't fix. What I was trying to fix was when that person picked up their horse, they could ride it, and it was successful. And the problem is, even though the horse was a little better at 90 days, the person wasn't any better. The person can't ride. Like, so many people anymore have such poor riding ability that it didn't really help them. Like, whether it had 30 days or 90, and the problem was with 90, their expectation went way up. So at 30 days, they would have been happy with the 30-day horse. The same horse that's a little better at 90 days, they thought it was going to turn into this kid safe. In 90 days, it went from green colt, kid safe. No. They changed the most the first 30 days, and then after that, they're just getting a little better. So what I thought I was going to solve didn't solve. So I got rid of it. I was like, you know what? You want to bring it for a week? Fine. A week for us? Right now it could change next week because, I've debated it. A week here is $400. And that's like, you drop them off on a Sunday, you pick them up on a Sunday. You drop them off on a Wednesday, you pick them up on a Wednesday. That's $400. You bring them for 30 days or a month, whatever, it's $1,400, but it's billed individually. We have a board cost, and it's written out, and we have a training session cost, and that's written out. And so when you get your bill, we're $1,400. Your bill might say $1,278. Well, we're gone these 2 days this week. We know we're going to miss these training days. There's 28 days this month. Well, then there might be a day where there's 31 days, and it might come out to $1,420. So our bills are all individual because we're only going to bill you for what we do. We get rained out for a week, and your horse is scheduled to stay for the next month. Well, now you're going to pay $1,100, or you're going to pay way less, because maybe $950, because that week we got rained out. Your horse gets hurt, we miss a week, the next month's going to be cheaper. A lot of what we do is 30 or 60 days, and it has a lot to do with people's financial situation. But going back to that piece, we just try to be fair. We only want to charge you for what we do. And we have that billing broken down. So if your horse gets hurt on the 17th, can't be ridden, and you can't pick them up till the 28th, well, all these board days are still charged, but no training days. So you'll get a refund. We refund people. You got to pay when you drop your horse off for that month. You got to pay on the 1st for the next month. But we will refund you. The reason we charge in advance is because we know we'll refund you. If something happens to you, we don't know if your significant other will pay for the work we've done. And it's a little hard to ask for money when there's a family crisis. So there's a lot of reasons to pay up front, but it's just because we know we'll pay you back. We don't know if you'll pay us if your car breaks down. Something happens. So the biggest reason I like to not have a minimum of days is it's cheaper for people. And I've been broke. I spent time broke. I get it. I understand. You're like, look, I need a little help. I need someone to get on him. And you got all these at 90-day minimum. It costs you $5,000, $4,500, $3,800 for 90 days, and it's a 90-day minimum. And you know what? For me, they don't change a lot from day 30 to day 90. Are they better? Yes. They're not green broke to kid broke better. And what I found is if you put 30 days on one, there's a lot more leniency on what people think is a good job. In that you put 30 days on one and their horse isn't perfect, they're like, well, he only put 30 days on it, and they're happy. You put 90 days on it, and then they get their horse and they can't operate it because they're not very good. Now they blame the trainer. Well, he put 90 days on it. It cost me $4,500. He put 90. Look, it's still a living animal. Like, I can't make it into a quad for you. It's if you interact poorly with your horse every time you interact with it, when you get it home, that thing's unraveled in a week or less. So I found you do 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks, a month, they're just way happier because they're like, man, he had him 2 weeks. He's riding out in the arena, swinging a rope on him, cracking a whip on him. They're like, hey, they get home and he's a little goosey. They're like, well, he only put 2 weeks on him. They put the work in, and you have to put the work in. Even on a 90-day horse, when they get home, you got to work them. You got to ride them. You got to do some groundwork. Like, now I try to get all my colts where by the end I can saddle them, step on, and go. But they ain't had 2 weeks off. They get Saturday, Sunday off. That's it. So you take them home and give them 2 weeks off, and then you want to saddle them and climb on. That's going to depend on how good of a horse you have. So there's so much we need to talk about with this colt starting, but I want you guys, I don't want you to have my ideas. I want you to figure out what's your ideas. What do you think's acceptable? Because if you don't ride as good, you need to send that horse out for longer. Like maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Maybe you ought to buy yourself a 14-year-old, not a 3-year-old. It takes a long time to get these horses safe for someone that's not as good. So buying one that's older and already proven and has been there, done that for 6, 7, 8, 10 years, that's safer. That's the way to go. And last little example here, and then I'll get off. I got one in right now I'm going to have for a week, and it's a 2-year-old, and in a week, that horse is going to have 4 rides, you know. And I've actually had this horse in the past because I had messed with it a little bit and saddled it. And so it had a saddle, and that helps. For me, if you're going to send me one, feel free to do groundwork. Feel free to saddle them. Feel free to spray them off. Feel free to do it all. I'm not the guy that's like, I need a clean slate. I prefer them saddled. Like, you know, most of the time, even done poorly helps me. So everyone that's like, you ruined them, I don't know. Like, I haven't had that as much. Could you ruin them? You could. I haven't seen it very often. Normally the ones that you end up ruining were never going to be very good anyways. Like, they were going to be tough. They were going to take longer to saddle. They were going to take longer to ride. So all that time people put in has always kind of helped me. So just an example, 2-year-old's coming for a week, put 4 rides on it. It's going to go home, and then it'll get started again in 3, 4 months. You know, it's going to help that horse through that horse's life to get little schooling, get turned out, little schooling, get turned out, little schooling. You know, rather than wait until it's 4 to put the first ride on it, this horse is going to be broke when it's 4. This horse is going to be at shows winning when it's 4. We're not going hard on it. We're just teaching it, hey, you can accept a person up there. You know, 1 ride, I loped it to make sure we could lope it. Now I walk trot, work on steering. Now I work on the mountain bike. I do other things, you know, 1 week, turn her out. So, or him. So what I want you guys to do is think, figure out what's good for you. How soon should they ride for you? What do you want as a client? And be careful what you tell them, because it's going to affect them, and you don't want your colt starter in a hurry. You just want to know in your head what you like, you know, and then don't worry. When you get there, you'll be a little lenient. You'll say, yeah, I wanted him rode in 5 days, and it took my guy 10. That ain't no problem. I want him rode in 30 days, and at 60, we're not seeing a ride. We might be shopping. We might be looking around. We might be asking our friends, hey, who'd you use? I used Mark. How long did it take him? Well, the first day he saddled him, he bucked like hell. The second day he rode him. The end of the week, he was riding the arena with a snaffle, and that sucker was good. I mean, that's Mark Lyon for you. The guy's amazing. I'm not quite that good. That guy is good. So these colt starters have different skill levels. Everyone's kind of getting a little bit of vocab on them. They're all getting where they can really sell you things. Be careful. So that's a long coffee talk, but you know what? We got so much to talk about in colt starting. So I'm going to leave it there. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.